Yeah. Okay, well, we're reconvening our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, November the 3rd, coming out of a closed session. And I just want to report back that staff was given direction with regards to a drainage issue as reported by Jeff Little's report dated November 3rd. So before we move on to the more formal part of our meeting, I just want to welcome everybody to November. You will be happy to know that we only have 8.5 weeks left to 2020. You likely have heard November referred to as Movember. Movember actually refers to a specific organization, and I don't want to highlight that organization per se, but I want to focus on what the organization has started. And it has started a discussion and an awareness campaign surrounding men's health, both physical and mental. Many organizations have followed this lead and have made the month of November the focus of men's health. As the mother of 4 boys, now men, I am keenly aware of the importance of this focus. As I have highlighted many times during these stressful times that we find ourselves living in, added attention to our mental health and well-being is paramount, especially for men, because there seems to be an added pressure to have it all together, to have it all figured out. And quite often, the struggles with anxiety and depression are battled alone. As the mother of a son who struggles daily with depression, I implore you to reach out to the men in your life, to check in on them to ensure they are looking after their mental health. There are many resources available online through many organizations. Please take the time to do the research and find local resources to support your male loved ones. At the very least, regularly check in with them so that they know they have a safe and supportive sounding board. We will be talking about Remembrance Day a bit later, but to no one's surprise, it will look a little different this year. Most legions, Lucans included, are discouraging public participation in services. Lisa will be sharing with us a little bit later how our Legion is being supported with their service. However, I want to encourage you to take the time to make it a priority on November 11th to pay your respects to those that have gone before us who have served community and country beyond what should be expected from anyone. The freedoms we are privileged to have because of their sacrifices should never be taken for granted or forgotten. Which of course leads me to tonight, November the 3rd. And you may think that I might reference the election our neighbors are holding even as we speak. Polls are getting ready to close in some areas. And as Ron said, actually 2 communities in New Hampshire, they've already closed and counted their votes, and everybody can see what the results were with that. But polls are beginning to close as our meeting progresses. I really don't know what my commentary might be, except I will be a good neighbor and quote a great American poet and songwriter. I will provide for you and I'll stand by your side. You'll need a good companion for this part of the ride. Leave behind your sorrows. Let this day be the last. Tomorrow there'll be sunshine and all the darkness past. Big wheels roll through fields where sunlight streams. Meet me in a land of hope and dreams. For all the flaws in a democratic process, it is still the best process that we can participate in. And with all that is at stake, and for all the unknowns, the process of casting a vote still provides me hope. And I hope for our neighbors to the south of us that they find some hope in casting their vote today. We will move now into a public meeting. And so I will need a motion to adjourn our council meeting so that we can sit as the Committee of Adjustment under the Planning Act. If I can get a mover and seconder for that, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that is carried. So I want to welcome Dan Fitzgerald again with us, who's joined us again tonight. And we are going to talk about the application that we discussed at our last meeting with regards to a minor variance application for 231 Butler Street. So Dan, I will hand it over to you.
Through the chair, thank you, all members of the Committee of Adjustment. As noted, you may recall the application that's before council, or sorry, the committee tonight, is with respect to a minor variance for a property at 231 Butler Street. The applicant is seeking a reduction to the minimum rear yard setback requirement, which is 7 meters, seeking to 3.02 meters, as well as an increase to the maximum permissible size for a home occupation from the bylaw prescribed 40 meters squared to a 69.7 meters squared of space. As discussed previously, staff did not have a concern with the proposed reduction to the rear yard setback, which would permit the construction of the addition on the lands, and felt that the proposal met the Planning Act tests for a minor variance. Further, staff then provided a review of the proposed increase to the home occupation maximum permissible size for the proposed use, and noted that an approval as such would run with the lands and not with the owner. Staff were also concerned that this could lead to a potential conflict in the future and detract from the residential character of the neighborhood. Committee did request staff to investigate whether or not it was possible to restrict future use of the lands to a personal training home occupation proposed by the applicant. So staff have sought additional planning opinion and have determined that it is possible to limit the increase to the maximum permissible size of a home occupation, specifically to the proposed personal trading studio through a condition on the minor variance. Given a further review of the existing bylaw provisions and the condition listed in the decision, staff are now satisfied the proposal meets the Planning Act tests for a minor variance. Given the above, planning staff are of the opinion that an increase to the maximum size limitations for home occupation, as well as a reduction to the minimum rear yard setback, do satisfy the Planning Act tests, and recommends that the subject application be approved, subject to the condition that it be limited to a personal personal training studio. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dan. Any questions or comments from the committee at this point for Dan? Councillor Regan.
Hi, thank you. I have no problem with the application, but with the recommendation, I just have a question, Dan. When you're saying that it's limited to a personal training studio and that no other form is permitted, how is that monitored, or what happens if it is? Now, not specific to this application, but I'm just reading that and I'm just wondering if that's monitored, or how do we check, I guess, or do we?
So through the chair, home occupation is a permitted right in the zoning bylaw. So as long as you're adhering to the provisions that are set forth within the prescribed limitations, then technically speaking, you're allowed to proceed. It's only in such a situation where generally a complaint is received that staff go out and investigate further as to why the complaint has been received. So in that case, if it was to exceed the maximum size permissions, then they would be issued a stop order to remove from such lands and then comply with the bylaw. Further, in this case, it would basically, the limitation would be at the 69.7% or square meters as opposed to any 40 square meters. It would basically be up to municipal staff to further enforce that. If we did receive complaints, then we would have that hammer to come back and say, as a condition of consent, you were only limited to this particular use of the property that's beyond that 40 meters squared. As well, there are existing provisions, as noted, in the home occupation provisions that basically say that it can't detract from the residential use of the neighborhood and it can't cause noise and dust and odors. So staff felt that based on that analysis, there should be adequate controls for the future that it would limit it to the specific use only, and that if there was any complaints received in the future, that staff did have the ability to remove said use from lands or mitigate appropriately with the owner.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Mastarakis.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Dan, do you have a definition for for the personal training studio. Does there need to be a definition? My only question is, if somebody has a personal training studio with 5 personal trainers and brings in 5 people an hour, not Dion and his wife, that's not their plan, but down the road, if it carries forward with the property, do we need a definition around that?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Mazarak, that's actually a really great point. And so the provisions that I did speak about previously that are in the bylaw limit the ability to have more than, I believe, 1 additional person employed on the lands. And then the definition of home occupation strictly prohibits any type of group activity. And based on Mr. Keller's plan, he did note that it's 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 training. And staff did feel that based on the existing definition that limits the ability to have a group operation, that one to 2 people is reasonable, and that would fall under the definition of a home occupation. Anything beyond that we would consider as a violation of the definition and then would be subject to enforcement.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
No, I just want to thank staff for coming up with a solution for the applicant and for our community to, which I hopefully will be passed. So if we got to make a motion, I would make that now. But if we're doing it at the end, that's fine. So.
No, we're going to do that now. So it would.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to accept Dan's recommendation with the limited personal training studio.
Okay.
So be accepted.
Okay, so we'll make that motion by the Deputy Mayor. I just need a seconder for that. Councillor Regan. Just before I call the vote, that's just a reminder that in accepting the planner's recommendation, this is the decision then of the committee, and it would be to accept obviously the application. So there's no other motion or anything after that this is the decision. Any further discussion on that? All opposed? And that's carried. And I know that the applicant has joined us, so hopefully he's happy with the decision that was made. I just wanted to echo what the Deputy Mayor said, and just thank you to staff and to Mr. Keller for coming together and working through this, because I think we all agreed at the last meeting, if we could come to a compromise that suited everybody, is in the best interest of everyone. So I think that worked out well. I do want to remind everybody that you've got to sign the judgment and the decision. So if you can come in to the office in the next day or so, it'll be at the front counter, and get that signed. Okay. Mr. Keller, Dion, did you want to say something? Oh, you're muted.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say thanks a lot to Dan and everyone for coming up with a solution that worked for us and for everyone else. So my wife Janelle is here as well. So we just want to say, yeah, thanks for everything, and really appreciate the opportunity to keep going with our home business. So thanks very much for that, and really appreciate it.
Well, that's good. We're glad that you chose Lucan. So to live and work.
Me too.
And play.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, so now we just need a motion to move back into regular council. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all opposed, and that's carried. All right, moving on. We don't have any delegations this evening. You've got the council minutes for October 20th, and you've had an opportunity to look at them. And unless there wasn't anything that needed to be amended, I would ask for a motion to approve those as circulated. Councillor Regan.
Motion to approve, yes.
Seconder. Deputy Mayor. All opposed? And that is carried. Okay, to business arising, we do have a number of things in front of us. I believe one of them Ron will speak to during his report. And if there was anything that needed to be added from our last meeting or anything that wanted to be spoken to. Okay. Moving on to correspondence, there is a number that have been received. There's two that have been pulled by staff. The first one is a letter with regards to our OMPF funding, and I will ask Catherine maybe to speak to this letter.
Okay, so this letter is just notifying us of our OMPF amount for 2021. And this is good timing to receive this, as noted in the letter. This is the time we start our budget process, so this number is very important to our revenue line. It's about $5,000 less than our 2020 amount, which isn't bad. It's a small decrease, but other people in our region have seen greater decreases this year. So we're happy with the number that we got so far. That's all.
All right, thanks for that, Catherine. Any questions on that one? Okay, the next one that was pulled has to do with the closure for Remembrance Day. I think you'll remember we did pass that a couple weeks ago, but there was just a mix-up in dates on the bylaw, so it's just been revised. So we'll pass that at the end of the meeting. Were there any other communications that council wanted to speak to or ask questions about?
I had one, but it's good. All right.
You're okay with that, Councillor Regan?
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, then if I could get a motion just to accept the correspondence for information, please.
Motion to accept.
Councillor Mastarakis and Councillor Regan, all opposed? That's carried. Committee reports, CEDC. Don't think there's anything.
No update. Just a reminder of our CIP meeting for those who are attending our workshop number 2, Thursday night at 6:30. So I think everyone should receive the agenda and a little worksheet.
Blue Water. Lake Huron, nothing, although we did get a report today that with the storm and water that was up in Grand Bend, they ran into some erosion issues at the plant, and so they have to do some work at the beach, but that's all I've got on that. Fire boards, I think we're trying to schedule 2 meetings. Ron?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just looking at the calendar here, the Lucan Vidal Fire Area Board will meet on Thursday, the 19th of November, and the Vidal Blanchard Fire Board is tentatively set for the 26th, the following Thursday.
Okay. ABCA and Upper Thames, Alex.
Yeah, we haven't had a meeting this month yet. I did have a board member annual kind of talk evaluation kind of thing with the Upper Thames. And I was unfortunately not able to make the last meeting due to a family crisis, but one of my pet peeves, I guess, and that's shared by a number of members of the board, were the fact that the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority owns a few residential properties that they maintain and rent out. And the question came up at the meetings over the last year or so, why we are in that business, and it's not really in keeping with what our mandate is. So I think we're moving towards liquidating those properties. It's a good time to do that, and that'll be able to put money back into the coffers to be able to do capital projects, and so it'll have a good impact on everybody all around. So I think that's kind of the direction we're going. We have a Nosabo Bayfield meeting coming up in next week on Thursday, so I should have something to report at our next meeting.
Great, thanks. Parks and Rec, don't think there's been a meeting.
No, there hasn't been, and I'd been holding off, waiting for there's two key things that we're working on right now that I was hoping to have updates for members, but I think it's been quite a bit that I would like to set up a meeting probably in the near future, just to keep people updated with the new mandates and everything that's going on with COVID.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Okay, moving on to staff reports. Start with you, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the activity report that's included in your package, the first item there, the Lucan detachment of the OPP, I believe it was the Deputy Mayor that had asked the Inspector, Dean Croker, who we should speak to about being able to maintain or ensure that we maintain an OPP station in Lucan. And so Inspector Croker did some poking around and found out that really you have to start with your local MPP, which is obviously Monty McNaughton. So every chance we get, we should reinforce that with Monty, that the fact that Lucan has an OPP station is a great benefit to us, and we don't want to lose that. We definitely, I think, can learn a little bit from what happened up in South Huron when they lost their OPP station to a centralized Clinton station. So I think, I don't know what the Deputy Mayor would like to do at this point, but maybe a formal letter at this point to the MPP would be appropriate.
Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Madam Mayor on this, and to keep it, doesn't necessarily have to be on Business Arising, I guess, but she had mentioned maybe this would be in the future a good delegation. And sorry, Madam Mayor, the minister would be that we would ask.
Well, right now it's Sylvia Jones.
Right now, Sylvia Jones, and maybe that'd be a good avenue for a delegation, whether it be Zoom or face to face, just to talk again. Not that we're trying. I think we just want to be proactive and let them know of our growth and of our concern, and again somebody hears us out, that we certainly want to be aware of it before it's a foregone conclusion. So if staff could keep that in mind for a delegation in the future, I don't know how though to make sure it happens. Yeah,
that's a pretty timely comment, because we actually did get notice that I think it's the Roma conference, Tina or Madam Mayor, if you could help me out.
Yeah,
one of those two conferences that are held in January and February, they are now open for arranging a meeting with any of the various ministries. So we can certainly submit a request to meet with Minister Sylvia Jones.
Yeah, that'd be good to know, because I think it's, again, from our standpoint, it's very positive. Our discussion we want to have.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you could do that, thank you.
We can do that. Perfect.
I guess sorry, Ron, but I guess to your point, would a letter to our MPP, would you want that as well, like in tandem?
I would like that as well. Yes, I think that carries a lot of weight if it's a formal letter from all of council. Yeah.
Okay.
And we can even cite the fact that the experience that Exeter had in losing their OPP station that has had I wouldn't say a perceived negative impact, but it is a visibility thing, and it does certainly has to help our lack of crime in our community. So yeah.
Okay.
So I can certainly draft up that letter and get it over to you, Madam Mayor, for your signature. So, okay, item number 2, the Santa Claus Parade. Obviously, due to the COVID situation and the ongoing pandemic, we can't do it in the same manner. I think we've had some conversations about how this is going to look and what we're doing in between Joanne Latta and Kim Gooding and Daniel Regan and I, and I think everybody has had a hand in this, trying to come together and figure this out. So the fire departments have joined in with the Lions Club and the Optimists. So everybody's kind of on board for this mini, let's call it a mini parade with all parties active. The fire department will be driving, front and back vehicles, and the Elsie Craig District Food Bank will be in the middle with the Lions Club collecting all the canned goods. So it's kind of a Santa canned food drive as well. So that will be the usual day, which is the first Saturday in in December. So we actually have all parties on board for this. And the route is actually, we're going to publish the route. Now, just a sort of a caveat, I guess, with the route. We can't exactly put the route on there because there's a lot of turnarounds and things like that, and it'll be too many arrows on the map. So it's a very rough map. So I don't want anybody sort of getting upset that, oh geez, it doesn't show that the parade's not going to go by our house. The parade will go by everybody's house. They will make sure of that. It's just we can't really show it on a map that's going to be large enough to display. So please bear with us. It's not a perfect map, but it sort of gives a sense of the direction of the parade, and that's the key point here. So, and in Granton there will be no map because there's really it's not that large, and certainly we can accommodate everything there. You'll hear it and you'll see it coming. So, but again, thanks to all parties for helping out and making this happen. I think it's very important. I think Councillor Reagan said it best. Well, and you know what? We can't stop Santa. We need to see Santa. He's got to bring the Christmas joy. So. The third point there, the county modernization initiative, the County of Middlesex's consultant continues to work towards the end report there. We await it with bated breath, but I think our expectations have been sort of muted a little bit because it is quite a task to try and get all lower tier municipalities pointed in the same direction. Everybody has different ways of doing things and everything else. So we're trying to find a common ground that everybody can use some piece of whatever the final result is on the various topics that they're looking at. So that's an ongoing one. First aid and CPR training. We've got upcoming staff training on Monday, November 9th and Tuesday, November 10th. So the next Monday and Tuesday, staff from all departments will be evenly split. So business will continue as usual, both at the Public Works, the arena, and at the municipal office. So again, just a reminder of the special council meeting tomorrow morning with Stuart Finleader, and he is charged with the task of updating our official plan. And that again is by Zoom tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And the final one is the human resources and health and safety services. The county is working on drafting an agreement for the lower tiers to access human resources staff member as well as access to a health and safety staff member. So I think when we had our CAO meetings, there was enough of the lower tier CAOs that were really looking for help in this area. So the county has sort of grasped this and sort of, I believe they've already made a report to council at the last meeting, Madam Mayor. Do you remember that?
Not formal.
Not formal? Okay. So that will be coming formally to county council for approval. And we very much look forward to that because I think it will standardize sort of policies and everything across the lower tiers, and it gives us access to specialized people who do nothing but HR and health and safety. So that'll be a big bonus for us on a go-forward basis. So, and that is my report, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Ron on his report? Councillor Mastracus.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. No, this is excellent, Ron. I'm excited about the human resource, health and safety, any optimization like that. Is it also in there that there'd be maybe centralized training as part of this? Is that part of the initiative?
So through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Mastracus' question, absolutely. The health and safety person will do training and they'll conduct the training in every lower tier municipality that wants it. Some municipalities, I believe Strathroy-Caradoc has their own HR person, and I believe they probably also have their own health and safety person. But certainly we will be taking advantage of that kind of service.
And just a comment, when we talk about delivery of service in accountability, transparent way, and I think this is an excellent way to improve what we do with our residents, and as offloading some of this work that is standardized to another central agency, kind of like a franchise. Let the head office do the work. They'll check it, they'll authorize it, have the accountant, have the HR and lawyers look at it, and then we run and do our business to serve our municipality and our taxpayers the best we can. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it will be a good news story across the county. Any other further questions or comments for Ron on his report? Seeing none, then I would ask for a motion to receive his report for information. Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor, all opposed, and that's carried. Okay, Tina.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Madam
Oh.
Mayor, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, just unless I missed it, are council scheduled meetings to discuss or no under Ron's?
Tina.
Oh, is that Tina? Okay, I saw it under, sorry, yeah, CAO clerk. Gotcha, good.
It
Not
can
Ron,
be
it's not-
Tina. It can be Tina and Ron.
Yes.
So it is that time of year that we do have to prepare our 2021 council meeting schedule. It has been brought up in past that possibly doing one daytime meeting would have a financial impact. So staff has prepared this report just to provide the information to you, council, to bring up the discussion and make a collective decision on whether you would want to entertain a daytime meeting or proceed as we have been in past. As there is financial impacts, staff wanted to make sure that council was aware, and I'll leave it up to you guys to discuss that.
Okay. Any comments on what's been presented? Two schedules have been presented. As Tina said, obviously, if we take on a daytime meeting, there is considerable savings in administrative costs. It's one thing to consider. Accessibility is another one. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, so I guess for myself, you know, I guess one of my concerns is unless there's a backup, I'm not sure your schedule or what you're planning on for me to back you up, Madam Mayor. But if you're running for warden again, my issue would be work. My commitment to be able to make all those meetings. If you're going to be warden, we'd have to make sure there's another backup. Not that I wouldn't be able to make most of the meetings, but I know comfortably I wouldn't be able to with my work schedule. I just couldn't. So the expectations would be probably for me to be at half of them. That should be the expectations of staff and council. Which if they're fine with that, then that's fine. But
that's with one meeting a month during the day and one at night.
Right. I thought it was a total of 10, 9 o'clock in the morning meetings. I thought.
Yeah.
A total of 10, but I thought.
Yep, correct.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying a guesstimate expectation should be 5. That should be the expectations of council, staff, and the constituents. I'm just, that maybe it's 8, but I would have a hard time committing to that at 100% for sure. I'm certainly not opposed to, seeing if it works better for the constituents and if there's more activity for a morning meeting. I mean, I certainly, if there's an appetite for it, I mean, having 2 meetings throughout the year and hopefully it coincides with everybody and we select our best months or something we've got different counselors that do different things that I feel are busier certain times of the year. I know for me, I've got certainly some time that I would throw out a couple of months if we wanted to try it for 2 meetings, but a commitment of 10 meetings during my work day would be tough to do as we know we have budgeting during the day, we have emergency meetings during the day. I mean, I certainly feel I do a lot during the day as it is. To add 10 more to what's done during the day, I need to make sure everyone realizes the expectations of what I'll be doing. So, yeah, that's just a comment. So.
Yep. No, thanks for that. Councillor Regan.
I'm supportive of option A, the meetings at night. I'd rather be able to commit to 100% of the meetings. And I guess that's the first thing. So would be option A for me. The other thing too is I know that there are a lot of residents and it's becoming a thing actually, people. I think we're getting more and more people involved. With delegations coming out, and I just feel that doing it during the morning, and I understand the financial implication. I still think that the chances of us all being together in the evening are a lot greater, and that most of us can commit to those. I think the attendance that we've had with the 6:30 meetings has been pretty good, quite frankly. And again, if we go to 9 o'clock meetings, I mean, I was looking at the schedule, and there's 2 days for sure that those are the first day of term for me. So I mean, I want to be able to fulfill my commitment to the community. So I would rather go with option A, so I can be here for all the meetings. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Councillor Mastarakis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I see the benefits to the staff and the costs, as long as there's a balance if with council members, and it doesn't restrict any new potential candidates in the next election from running, and a balance to ensure that residents are available to attend these meetings live, so to speak. There may be a hybrid option that Dave talked about that we look at and try. I'd be supportive of a hybrid between A and B.
Councillor Westman.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much, the only council member that every meeting I have to leave work for. So I don't have a big problem with it. It is what I signed up for, and I don't mind. I mean, I wouldn't want to see us change it and disadvantage anyone else. That's not something I would be supportive of. If it's going to save us staff time and money there, that's fine. But again, I really would agree with everyone's take on it about finding a balance that works well for everyone. That may be very difficult to do, but I think that I think the evening meetings are better for the public. They're possibly better for most of council, and as much as I'd like to be able to not lose a day's pay per month over this, I would not want to see anyone else losing time from work either. So that's my thoughts on the subject.
Thank you for that, Councillor Westman. Okay, so I don't know. I mean, we do need a motion to direct staff, or we can defer it. Perhaps maybe the option would be to accept option A, but maybe with the asterisk beside it that we do look at 2 dates throughout the year that possibly we try it at 9 a.m. And that doesn't have to be firmed up tonight, as long as we give enough notice. We can obviously change the times of meetings, but that would be one suggestion to handle, to think about how the motion might be worded. The one question I've had, and I have brought it up in the past with Ron, I've mentioned it to Tina. I suppose I should have talked to Dan about it, because I think it's Thames Centre, and I think in Tina's report she mentions Thames Centre, that all of the planning takes place in one meeting, and maybe that could be an option that we work towards too as well. Sometimes I find we're overwhelmed with planning after planning after planning meeting. And to do it all at once might be an option. It might be, I mean, again, that doesn't have to be decided tonight. That could be something that maybe is worked in for the next term of council or something like that. But it would be interesting to hear from Thames Centre, I think, because I think they changed that, if I'm not mistaken, Ron, maybe the last term of council, where they just went to one meeting a month for all planning matters. But it would be interesting to know from their perspective how that works. Yeah.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I can ask Thames Centre and ask them when they started and how they're finding it. Because I think we've discussed this a couple of times, and obviously some of the concerns are that if we only deal with planning once a month, there's a possibility that somebody misses the deadline for the, say, November meeting, and then they're pushed off to the December meeting. But by that time, it's a month and a half from the time they've applied for it. And sometimes in the case of a minor variance, you know, those timelines don't make people too happy. So yeah, it's about, like you said, trying to find that balance and what works. So I'll certainly, you know, between Dan Fitzgerald and I, we can certainly find out the answers to those questions.
So going back to the schedules that Tina has provided, if somebody wanted to make a motion to direct staff one way, this would be a good time. Deputy Mayor.
Well, I liked your option there, but I do think we should have Tina try to reach out to each of us. That we maybe certain count, like to do a hybrid of the two and go with option, I think it was A, and then with the expectations to have 2 daytime meetings. There might be counselors that respond back to Tina that are, you know, I'm just pick 2 months out of the 12, they're fine with it, they'll make it work. I know in my head, there'll be some, I'm sure Peter's busier with his business, maybe sometimes rather than others, maybe not. So all of us could, you know, I know myself too. So I don't, the problem is if we let it go, because I think it's important for the public to see though, our year-long agenda and for all of us to try to work around it. So I do think it's important though that Tina stays on top, you know, stays on top of us on getting back to her then on good for the 12 months or at least certain months that we would pick for a daytime meeting, then not just to drop it till January and go, oh, well.
Right.
Yeah, because I think it's important to have that schedule out for the year for everybody.
Yeah.
So yes, so I'll make that motion that that 2 meetings throughout the course of next year, ideally, depending, I guess, on what Tina gets back from everybody, that it is possible to have 2 daytime meetings to have next year.
But based on option A, obviously.
Yeah, based on option. Yeah.
Okay, can I get a seconder for that one? Councillor Reagan, any further discussion on that? All opposed? And that's carried. So I guess, Tina, to the Deputy Mayor's point, maybe we'll send out an email of the dates and try to take some sort of poll as to what works best.
I can do that. Maybe use the Google Doodle poll. Okay.
Yep, perfect. Did you have anything else, Tina?
I just wanted to mention through you, Madam Mayor, the training on the respect and workplace policy with Cindy McNair, where dates are being set up for employees and the fire departments, but she has agreed to attend the December 15th meeting to give training for council members. So just want to give everybody a heads up that meeting will start earlier than scheduled with a training session for that policy. So that's December 15th.
Okay.
And that's everything.
Great, thank you for that. Any questions for Tina? Okay, finance, Catherine.
Okay, the report in front of you is brought to you. I'll be presenting on behalf of both the Treasury and Public Works. And it's in regards to our water and sewer billing and collection policy, and in particular, 2 items within that policy that I want to draw attention to. In particular, so the first issue is regarding how we collect water arrears. Our current policy, we go through a disconnection notice process, and with no payment, then water could be disconnected. And then the other item I want to bring up is the issue regarding holding the accounts in tenanted properties, holding them in the tenant's name rather than the property owner's name. So we got a meeting with staff and we noticed there's some issues regarding our current collection policy regarding disconnection, and I have them listed there. Some of the main ones, we find it's very time consuming for staff to administer that process. So in those those 2 weeks and those final kind of 2-3 days before disconnection, it's very, all, I think that's all that a couple people in Treasury actually do for those few days. It takes up all their time to make sure that they're either receiving phone calls from the residents that receive these notices, and also making sure, looking through all the payments, make sure we haven't missed anything, that we apply it properly before we actually disconnect. Of course, on the public works side of things, they're concerned that could create wear and tear on the equipment as you could, as you turn the curb stops on and off, that could create wear and tear and then eventual replacement, which could be costly. And also they have concern with the safety issue with going on other people's property to put these door hangers on, and as well as disconnect water. And of course, our one big concern as far as the public goes, for lack of a better term, we call it public shaming of those with water arrears. That's not our intent, but that's those door hangers go on someone's property, and if your neighbors see them, it's kind of telling your neighbors, hey, I don't pay my bills, and that's not really a nice community thing. So we want to try to move away from that with those kind of with that idea. So to address some of these issues, we looked at what other people are doing and what our options are, and we're proposing to eliminate the water disconnection procedure for water arrears, and rather just simply move those amounts to the tax roll of the property, of course, for a fee. And then that amount will become collectible in the same manner as taxes, which means that there's interest on a monthly basis of 1.25%. And of course, there's more issues with that. If there's no payment after 3 years, you can start in the tax sale process. And this process is allowed under the Municipal Act. And in talking with our local, other lower tiers that have water, they don't do the disconnection process. They just simply roll the amount to taxes, and they have different manners of doing that and timing. So that's about water arrears. And then regards to tenant accounts, we want to start to move away from having those. So we want to grandfather the ones in that we currently have until there's a change in a tenant, and not set up any new ones. So we only have about 33 accounts right now, and it won't be an issue unless they don't pay. Then it'll become back to the property owner, and there'll be have to be a lot of communication with that as well. So what else do I want to say? So as the budget implications are, there would be, if we go with this change, or propose, if you want to direct us to look at this change, there'd be a savings in staff time as well as possible equipment repair costs. But if changed, there'll be a loss in the fees charged for disconnection and reconnection, although those have been minimal in the past. So I have a couple of options there for you. Of course, do nothing and continue with the way we're currently collecting water arrears, or give staff direction to further explore this and come back with a policy at the next meeting outlining the changes. And yeah, it's just in general, it's just both Jeff and I have found staff is just, it seems to be kind of a funny time during those 2-3 weeks of collecting that. And I know there's one downside to that would be of not doing disconnection, is that we might no longer become a priority for people to pay their water bills, but eventually they'll have to pay it some way with the tax, if it goes to their taxes. So what that does, I guess in a better word, is just saying that the township will pay those water bills, but then collect them and just charge interest on a monthly basis. So that's really how that works. So water will still show getting the money. And if there's a fee, we can align that fee of $25 to still stay in water, because that's what they would have got with those door hanger fee as well, if that's what we choose. If is accepted in the policy if that's what we outline. So I think that's all I have, unless Jeff has anything else he wants to add.
All right, thanks for that, Catherine. Questions, comments on this? Councillor Mastarakis and then Councillor Regan.
You, Madam Mayor. Yeah, Catherine, one question. Is the interest rate the same that's charged between the taxes and the water accounts currently? Is it the same rate?
Through the mayor. So right now when we have the water bill, for example, we have the September 30th water bill, and they're we're due October 16th. And if we aren't paid, there's a 5% interest rate. It's one time only on those. Whereas with taxes, it's 1.25% every month.
Okay. And just a comment, this rollover with income properties, Hydro One does it, Union Gas do it. They put the owner of the property, and if it's an income property, it rolls over to the owners to pick up the bill if the tenants aren't paying. So on that side, I believe it's fairly standard. So no, I agree with the direction.
Councillor Regan.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. So just a couple of things. First of all, I really like the idea that we're gonna, or can roll that over, because it does look like it's going to save some money. And I like the idea that we're not publicly shaming people for the lack of the better term. I do a couple of questions though, so I just sort of rolled them all into one. I'm just wondering, like, just currently, how many disconnections we have, or we have on average. Have we actually ever shut the water off for residents? How long, how often? And is there a fund available in the community for, say, people, considering what's going on right now? Is there a fund for people that to sort of help them out? Because I don't, we don't, I guess if we've cut off water, we've had to, I guess, but it's just something I'd like to really try to avoid.
Yeah, through the mayor. So I did do some analysis. I look back through January, like through 2018 to present. And I found on average, we have about 60 water disconnection notices that go out. And after the 2 weeks, we do the door hangers thing, and there's about half of those are remaining. So there's about 30 door hangers that we would prepare and hand deliver to each house. And then over the next 3 days, people come in with those notices, and on average, we only have about disconnected maybe 1 or 2. And when they usually see payment pretty quickly after that. So nobody's really disconnected from water for more than maybe a few days, unless there happened to be a way, then it might be a week or so, but that's very rare. So from an average of 60, you're down to maybe 2 actually getting disconnected on average. In our last go around, we had 0 that were actually disconnected, and of those 30 door hangers, it seems to be the same people every time. So I don't know if people use this as a payment
reminder, yeah.
As a payment reminder, and this is their do or die. Okay, you're gonna be without water, let's pay it, because somehow the money comes up. Also, in that time frame, people are allowed once a year to enter into a payment agreement with us. That will avoid them from being disconnected, so that they sign an agreement, we're going to pay, we discuss it, and they know that if they don't follow that, then we'll go out and disconnect. As far as your other question about, is there a fund or there's help, but we don't keep a fund. Again, we help allow people to have that payment agreement if they need it once a year. But as particular to COVID, council did, they approved a payment of $3,000 to the Lucan Lions Club to be used for social aid related to COVID. And I'm not sure how that's uptake. We don't have that information. That'd be something that the township wouldn't want to administer or go into. I think that was the discussion at the time. So like service clubs like them are, they're better equipped to assist and know the need for those types of situations. Of course, there's other programs delivered from COVID through other levels of government and such, especially for businesses. I think Lisa's posted a lot of that information on social media that businesses can reach out to if they're struggling during COVID or how to get back on track. So I think those kinds of things are out there. I hope that answers your question, but.
It does. No, thank you very much. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Ron, I saw your hand up. Did you want to add something?
Yes, if I could, Madam Mayor, just a couple more things, Councillor Reagan. When it comes around to the December notices, which then drag into January, if it gets to the point where we have to shut off water, we've had it in the past where, the public works staff have had issues shutting the water off, and then something breaks, then you're into backhoe. It's winter time. It just gets costly to do that kind of thing. And this, I'm in full support of what Catherine and the Public Works Department are suggesting here, because I do see a lot of benefit in this in various forms. So thank you.
Jeff, did you want to add something? I see your.
Yeah, I'll just, obviously I support this. I see what happens in those couple of days and it gets pretty chaotic. But one of the comments I'd like to make is that obviously we do not shut a lot of water off, which is a good thing. But there has been an instance where we have, and to me, water is kind of essential for life, in a way. We do provide so that if we have to come back in after hours, or if we have to come in on weekend and turn water back on, obviously there's a cost to all this to the person, and we charge the account holder. But if, to me, it starts to add up where you start to charge them for the water being turned off and you charge them for the water to be turned back on. And if they're already struggling to pay the water, we're kind of adding to the situation, but yet holding them over a barrel because it's water. It kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth, but that's just a comment I have.
Okay, thanks for that, Jeff. Any other questions or comments? So there is a motion that's already been prepared with the option 2 as as Catherine's recommendation. So we can deal with that at the end of the meeting unless council wanted to go in another direction, but I'm kind of gathering from the discussion that that's probably not the way to go. All right, anything else, Catherine?
No, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for that. Planning. I think this is going to be a joint presentation with Dan and Jeff.
Madam Mayor, I guess I'll start and we'll get started on this. I'm assuming there'll be a few questions as we go through this. So before I get started, I'd just like to explain that there has been a request brought forward to council, and that council needs to review that request. And that council, as the planning authority, can make a decision on that request. So I just want to make sure before we start in on this, that council's aware of what we're starting with here. So the report I bring forward is based on planning, which Dan is available, and I'm sure he'll have comments about, and is based on engineering, which comes from my side of the report. The one thing that I just want to make sure council is aware of, that they bring in the community and the neighborhood and the history is something that council will keep in mind as we're going through this report. And I just like to say before we start that this request, approval or not approval, has no way reflect on the development itself. It's the process that we're dealing with here, and I just want everybody to know that it's not about the development itself. It's about the process of moving the development forward. So having said that, we'll start with the report. Everybody's had a chance, I would assume, to read the request that was attached to it, and then have a chance to read the report. And basically, it comes down to the request. In the situation is to have the development classified as a class 4 designation in regards to noise in the area. So I won't read the whole report going through everything, because it talks about classes and class what there are out there, and how it's done through the MOECC, and how they set the guidelines. And yet I just wanted to point out that even though this is a guideline from them, part of it though is how they register their noise moving forward. So even past planning, these noise levels are used, if there's a disagreement or setting noise levels for industry further on. So, but the into the discussion portion of it, so that Osable Bayfields has asked for that it to be classed as Class 4. It would be, and without further just getting into a lot of it, it would lean more to a Class 2 at the present moment. And if we were to go with that, we would look at the noise and how it relates to a Class 2. But the request now is to use a Class 4. We know that we'll have to do if we do go to a Class 4, we'll have to do a lot more in-depth study for the noise in the area. There was one source used in the noise study that the developer has brought forward at the request of the municipality, and we requested the green elevator be tested in that noise study. But it's acknowledged that if we do go to a Class 4, that all noise would have to be studied, and there would have to be further information brought forward on all the industrial or all the noise sources in the area. Having said that, the submitted noise study that was brought forward does show that the elevator at times does go above a Class 2. So we already know that in that area, there is noise being emitted above what we would normally call a Class 2. It's just above that, and it falls in through the nighttime hours when the elevator is running. So we do know that moving forward. So as we go forward, I'll leave the options till the end, and I'll explain the options a little bit more there. So there is multiple activities in this area that do emit noise. And I think we're all in agreement, whether you're the developer or whether you're the municipality, we're not here to hinder the existing businesses. In fact, we want to make sure we support the existing businesses. I just like to point out that a Class 4 would make it easier for current and future businesses to function in this area. It does allow for a higher level of noise to be emitted into the residential area. Having said that, I just like to point out before we keep, that there is already existing properties in the area. So I think that's important to keep in mind, that we're not talking about the existing residential areas. We're not talking about the existing businesses. We're talking about the development itself and how we would like to classify that development moving forward. So as and a note that I just like to point out that if we do classify it as a Class 4, that labels that development with that, so that going forward in the future, any future people coming in and buying into that development would be told that it's a Class 4 and would be aware of it. That doesn't mean someone who bought a house in the older neighborhood is going to be told that. It just means in the newer development that's going to happen. So when Dan and I are trying to put this report together, obviously I'm not an expert on noise, and I think Dan would say the same thing. So we look to the experts that are from our fields. And so I reached out to GM Blue Plan for an engineering assessment. And their assessment basically came back that we need more information, that yes, there is a higher level noise over Class 2, but we really don't have any more information on engineering there, such as mitigation, such as the other noise sources, that sort of thing. So their recommendation back to the municipality was to get more information, basically, that we need we need to find out what's going on in the area. On Dan's side of things, and I'll let Dan speak to this shortly, but he did reach out to not only his colleagues across the county, but also reached out to other special people in the industry that know a lot more about noise studies and classification. So and his information that he got back was two things. One, you need your information. If you're going to do a class 4, you need to know what's going on. And number two, which was really interesting, when he reached out to his colleagues in the county, generally most municipalities stick to the lower class, such as a class 2, and look to mitigation before actually jumping to class 4. And so to follow that up, we wanted to get examples in the county where class 4 was used, and we really couldn't find a true class 4 that we could bring forward to council to say, here's what's been done. So, and I think as Dan I'll give Dan an opportunity, but that's one of the things we've talked about is it's not about that we think this cannot be a class 4. It may well be a class 4. We just don't know if the better solution is using mitigation in the subdivision itself to stop the noise from coming in, such as sound barriers, building materials, and that sort of thing before we go to step 4. And that's where I think we both can have that concern, is that we haven't really investigated the mitigation. If we already know that the sound is above the 2, but we really don't know what it would take to stop that noise from entering into the development. The options that council does have in front of them is that we can stick to a class 2 and ask for mitigation. A lot of developments across the area, that's the way municipalities move forward, and it's put onto the developer to build their development to limit the noise entering into the development. Council can move forward and recognize a class 4, and then we can test. Obviously, the follow-up would be to test all the other noises in the area and find out if there's any further mitigation to keep the noise levels down, or that the area does meet a class 4 there. So, and then the third option for council is to not make a decision, but to ask for more justification on the classification 404 and bring that justification back for further discussion for going forward on a class 4. Before I let Dan jump in there, I'll just say that obviously Dan, based on the planning side of things, and myself based on the engineering side of things, we've both received back information that we really need more information to make the proper decision, or to support the proper classification to 4. So the recommendation in our report is to bring back more information to council before we make to a class 4. Having said that, I mean, I just want to make sure that that we understand that it's about this development only, that we recognize there's already a residential component there, and there's already an existing industry there. So sometimes Dan and I have talked about this, that are we going to a class 4 anyways? And we don't want to create 2-tier residential communities where one community has mitigation and another portion of the community does not. So there is a bit of a concern there. So I guess I'll stop and I'll turn it over to Dan. And Dan, if you have some comments, I know planning has a lot more input than engineering, but it is an engineering. Noise is part of the engineering, but planning has a bit more to say about it. So I'll turn it over to Dan.
The chair, thanks, Jeff. I think you gave a fairly good synopsis of what we're kind of dealing with respect to class 2 versus class 4. What it really boils down to at the end of the day is class 2 based on MOE guidelines is the general noise, acceptable level of noise within a residential subdivision that municipalities, generally speaking, should be seeking to adhere to. And that basically boils down to the fact of future residents being able to enjoy, their lots, their outdoor space within their own lands. However, with that said, MPC 300, which is this guiding document from the Ministry of Environment, does provide opportunities to exceed those class 2 noise levels on residential properties. And it's for specific situations like this, where it is an infill development within an existing area that does have legally, lawfully existing noise sources that do potentially exceed ministry guideline standards within residential neighborhoods. So that's what the intention of a class 4 designation is to provide that opportunity for both the developer to reduce their potential cost for development of lands and to reduce their potential mitigation for noise on lands, and as well, at the end of the day, I wouldn't say protect industry, because if it's a lawfully existing use anyways, a lawfully existing industry use that is adhering to their noise requirements, then there's no impact to them from class 2 to class 4. If they're illegally existing, then the onus is on the developer to reduce noise on their site, not on industry. So I just want to make sure that clarification is out there, that everyone knows the implication is not on industry, it's on the developer in this, regardless of if it's class 2 or class 4. And the other thing I would note is we're not necessarily saying it's, as Jeff kind of alluded to, we're not saying it's inappropriate to use a class 4 designation in this lands. When you look at the pure definition in the technical documents, this does seem like it's a prime candidate to be a class 4 lands. We're just working from the from the professionals and the judgments that have been given to us in the review, that generally speaking, all development should be seeking a class 1 or 2 land designation and to reduce noise to that level. Only in certain circumstances where it's been proven that it's infeasible to do so, that we should be considering class 4 designations of lands. So in this particular case, I would note that the developer, based on staff recommendation of existing official plan policy, only studied the grain elevator at this particular point in time as the source of noise. So that was a specific request of planning and staff because of the official plan policy that we do have in place for the draft plan approval of the AuSable Field subdivision. Through that noise study, there was, it was identified that there are other sources of noise in the area that could potentially be even more impactful to this development than the grain elevator is. And that was kind of one of the main concerns that both myself, Jeff, as well as the reviewing consultant had with moving forward with a class 4 designation. More so because we just didn't fully understand what the potential noise impact was on the lands. We only knew what the potential impact was from one source on the land. So again, we're not saying that it's inappropriate to view these lands or designate them as class 4. We're just saying from our perspective, from the very technical side of the equation, more justification would be better for us to have more justification to say, okay, a relaxation of the MOE standard is appropriate in this particular case because we know what the potential impact is on this land, and because we know that it could potentially impact the future development that's proposed on this particular parcel of land based on what they're coming through with draft plan approval for. So that's really what we're wanting to know is, a more comprehensive noise study that addresses all those sources of noise as opposed to just that one source of noise. And that's where our recommendation is coming from. But again, what I would note is MPC 300, as well as the MOE guidelines, leave it up to the municipality to establish their own process of how they want to proceed. In this case, Lucan, I think this is probably the first case that you've ever kind of dealt with this particular scenario, and there's not a procedure in place. So at the end of the day, we're working on the professional judgments of the experts in the field and what we've been told. But again, it's up for discussion. It's up to council's interpretation as to how they want to proceed, whether or not if they want to wait for a more comprehensive noise assessment to determine if there are mitigation factors that can be put in place to reduce to a class 2, or if they want to proceed with, okay, well, we think this development based on our review of the definition of what a class 2 versus a class 4 is. We believe that this, in practice and theory, does meet that requirement of a class 4, and will allow the developer to move forward with that interpretation, and then design their own mitigation strategy based on that class 4 designation, which at the end of the day is an impact to the future development, but it's also, just as a point of clarification, would also have to be notified and disclosed to any future purchaser or renter of those lands. So just so council fully understands what the implication is, and I'm sure there's going to be questions, and we'll try to keep it out of the technicalities as to what it means, and just try to keep to the high level of what the potential impact is to both the township and the developer industry, as well as future residents.
Okay, thanks for that report and background, Dan and Jeff. Questions, comments? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I guess I've talked to Jeff and Dan on this, and I like the recommendation or the option of that the lands be classified a 4, and that additional full comprehensive study be done on noises to be mitigated if need be from the study. It's about justifying the reasons why we as council and staff think it's a class 4. There is nothing technical. There is no noise study that'll come back to tell us this is a class 4. And the reasons I like it is I like it for ourselves. I like it for our staff. I like it for the industrial area beside it. And I like it for the new people moving into our community. And those are my reasons for liking that. The class 4, from talking to our staff, it's kind of funny. The reason the developer did the noise study was because I believe it's in our official plan that a study needs to be done around that grain elevator, because we realize that it's a heightened noise area. And that's why it was done. And after the noise study, it is a higher than a class 2. So we've got that barometer there for justification, as it's in our official plan, that we know it's sensitive to noise. I think, you've got, it's an infill site that needs to mix with the existing long-term commercial properties we have there. And again, that's justification of why I believe the province come up with class 4. These are the reasons why I think we should proceed with a class 4. I think it's good that the neighborhood, as that develops, that they're aware of that moving in, and not just from living there standpoint, but when they're walking, biking, and they move in there as families, that heightened awareness is there for them. There's Bus Barnes, there's Langford Lumber, there's the Scott's Elevator. To be honest, after reviewing this with staff, if the noise level was even a 2 or under, on this case, honestly, like, there is a lot of activity over there, and it has elevated noises there. It's proven that. I mean, we have it in our official plan. That's why they did the noise study. There is industry there. It's an infill lot. These are all the reasons why they have a class 4. So those are my initial comments anyway. So I like Jeff's option on that. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions, comments with regards to this report? Councillor Mastarakis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you. So if we move, let's say the class 4 is 60 decibels, is this like when we change a speeding sign on the road that people see now a 60 and they can drive 70 or 75? What's the variance around? So right now you're saying one of them is actually over 50 or 55 over a certain limit. Does this now allow some room around that 70 decibels if somebody comes in with a new business in that area, takes over, and would this class 4 potentially create a higher volume around that? And how is that managed?
I'll start maybe, Dan, and so the ministry I'll call it the Ministry of Environment. They're the ability to come in. If there is a complaint to come in, they'll do, it's like pollution. Noise is actually something that they'll measure, and they put the limits on it. So this isn't something that they'll let slide, in the fact that if a complaint does come forward about the noise, we can test board or the Ministry of the Environment can be brought in and looked at it. I wouldn't think that any ministry, when you get into something like this, would want to let things slide. In fact, Dan, I'll let you comment on it, that businesses do have to register in themselves, and they should have, I don't want to call it a ranking, but a rating. And am I correct, Dan, on that each of those businesses that exist over there will already have a rating? But I'll let Dan comment on that.
Yeah, so through the chair, technically speaking, through MOE, any business operating has to have what's called a noise certificate, which is the approval through MOE for a certain level of noise that they're allowed to produce on the particular property. So, and that's based on initial noise modeling that they do prior to actual development of the lands, and then subsequent testing has to occur afterwards to ensure that they're meeting that specific, whatever that specific number is. But more back to your question as to is there a variance level or is it a hard cap? So when it comes to those classifications, so for instance, the class 2 provides a hard cap at 45 decibels for exterior spaces at certain times of day, whereas a class 4 allows for an additional 10 decibel impact to those properties. So at the end of the day, there is that hard number. They would have to mitigate to that exact specific number. Anything above that 55 or 45, whatever it might be, would be then a violation of the MOE noise certificate, and subsequently they would be subject to fines, as well as having to further mitigate their own existing operations to bring it back down to their approved noise levels.
Thank you.
Hey, Councillor Reagan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I think either for Jeff or for Dan, so I'm just wondering, and I'm reading through the report a little further on. So just a hypothetical question. So if a developer asks for a category 4, right, and they get a category 4, and they tell people, oh, by the way, you're in an elevated noise area, does that mean the developer doesn't have to mitigate the construction so that there's more soundproofing, the windows are, they're building for that? I don't know if I'm making any sense with that. It's just, to me, it was just that if you're getting a category 4 and you're telling people there's an elevated noise, do they still have to build to mitigate for that? To bring, like, you know what I'm saying? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Reagan. Jeff, you can jump into if you want, but that is like 100% correct. So if you're at a class 2, you cannot exceed 45 decibels to a certain outdoor noise level. If you're at a class 4, you can exceed to 55 decibels without any type of mitigation. So when you look at the different classes or noise classifications that are out there, if council wanted them to maintain a class 2 designation of the lands, then they would have to mitigate to a certain level to only hit 45 decibels of noise in the lands. However, they would be afforded an additional 10 decibel threshold, if you will, in a class 4 land. So if there was a situation where, they were, I think they're showing a couple of units at 47 or maybe 49 decibels under the existing noise study that they provided for the grain elevator, that means that in a class 4 designation of lands, they would not have to mitigate until it hit a 55 decibel level. However, with that said, any class 4 designation does require warning clauses on title that identifies to the purchasers and the renters that they are in a heightened area of noise. So that's a requirement of MOE under the class 4 designation.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I find myself leaning towards option 2. I mean, it seems to be the most serviceable one available to us. So, yeah, I think that's the only way to go myself.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
No, I guess, the biggest thing is on this classification is that, and that's why I think it is important, that option that Alex just spoke to, is that it's done with a comprehensive noise study, that it's still classified a 4 which I believe it's the characteristics of that land and area. After a noise study, it doesn't, there's like, after talking to Dan and talking to Jeff, it's amazing how we don't use any data from the noise study to get to classification. There is nothing technical about it. So to me, even in our official plan, again, we state that area is of a higher noise area. I mean, that's to me the justification. We have a lot of justification already. And that study, to Daniel's point, they haven't studied the bus barns yet. So the bus barns and all the buses, when they're all started, they have to do mitigation after the noise study if need be. But that area, I think, warning the residents of that area that they are in a class 4 is very prudent on our part. Regardless, just that area is an industrial area, and that's what classification 4 for an infill site is, a definition of a class 4. And to do a noise study first doesn't get us to classification. So it's not technical. And I do like Jeff's option of the class 4 designation with a comprehensive noise study to see if mitigation needs to be done, as that area, I believe, in our community is at a higher noise level. So that's the option when we're ready for whenever that happens, Madam Mayor, for a vote, that's what I'd like to proceed with. So thank you.
Thank you. We've got a couple of questions. Who would pay for the comprehensive noise study?
Through the chair, the developer would have to pay for that.
The developer pays for that. Okay. Jeff, you made a comment earlier that kind of tweaked me. Because this is an infill site and there's already an existing residential area around it. I guess should extra mitigation be required? I guess you had said something about it, like a have and a have not kind of situation. And I guess I'm looking for a little bit more information as to what you mean by that. The fact that the existing residential area doesn't have any sound mitigation, but the new one possibly could.
If council decides that it would rather keep it as a class 2 and say to the developer, look, we want to keep your development as a class 2, and we want mitigation, meaning, again, there could be walls, there could be triple pane windows, obviously, to keep that noise level out. Or I must say, they could go to the green elevator and ask them to put shrouds on and that sort of thing. Having said that, if they do go with a sound barrier on their development, that doesn't affect the existing houses already there. So they're
Right.
going to have to deal with the noise that they've already have and they already will have there as it is. So in a way, we're creating this new development that says you're going to stick to a quieter neighborhood, but everybody else is going to be with what has been there in the past. And the only reason I point that out is it does create a disparity into the neighborhood there. It's hard to put that in perspective. If this was a brand new large development coming in where it's all new, I could very much see how mitigation would be the very first measure.
Right.
But because this is more of an infill into an existing relationship of industrial versus residential, I think there's room for a class 4.
Okay.
Is what I'm going at.
And then I just want to confirm, just so I understand this correctly, because this is like probably one of the most technical reports we've ever gotten. So class 4, and it's at whatever it is, 45 decibels, but they'd be allowed to go to 55 or whatever that is, that 10 degree increment before then mitigation would have to be applied, correct?
That's correct.
But mitigation would still have to be applied even with the class 4 designation if they reach that level.
That's correct. If the study they bring back shows that there's signs over that, they have to bring in mitigation.
And then to the deputy mayor's point, again, what he's saying is that a noise study will not bring us to a class 4, that really is a decision of us. Like, are we going to get a professional that would say it's a class 4?
Through the chair to the mayor. So a more comprehensive noise study of all the sources of noise on the property would give us a better understanding of what the potential impact is on future development. So currently, right now, I think the study says 47, and maybe one unit is at 49. Is that correct, Jeff? I believe so. Something around that.
Yeah.
So there may be mitigation measures based on that grain elevator that can be implemented on that site that would allow it to stay at a class 2. However, with that said, we don't know what the potential impact is of the other noise sources on that property, which might be well beyond that 49 threshold. Could be in the 60s, could be in the 70s, which would then provide further justification to say, you know what, there is a fairly substantial noise impact on this property. To mitigate that, to allow for development to occur at a class 2 would be very cost prohibitive to allow any development to move forward on this land. As such, we think it's appropriate that that additional 10 decibels is appropriate in this particular case, so that the mitigation that occurs on the lands is not as extensive as it would be if it was a class 2.
Right.
That's kind of where we were coming at in terms of our understanding of the entire situation and scenario before we just went down the path of classifying it as a class 4. That's kind of the way the MOE intends it to happen. However, with that said, like I mentioned before, it's just a prescribed process. It allows each municipality, every township, to prescribe their own processes as to how they wish to proceed and move forward.
Okay, thanks. All right, Councillor Mastarakis.
Through you, Madam Mayor, what I'm trying to get my head around is the difference between 50, 60, and 70 decibels, what that means. So I'm looking at one website, I'm not sure if it's correct or not, but 60 decibels is half as loud as 70. So it's not, it doesn't seem like you're going up 10 when you make the move. You're going up double the volume. And it's, if somebody reaches 70, it says annoyingly loud to some people. It's like having a vacuum cleaner right beside you in your home, basically, is the kind of example. So to me, it's understanding what that change from 50 to 60 means. Similar, if you go to 80, it's twice as loud as 70. So so that's a question I'd like to follow the recommendation on. Let's see what this means, and if we can get some understanding of what that volume is currently, and maybe we have to do something else if there is a higher volume that should be in the area anyways. But I would look to the recommendation that's you've put forward at the bottom. We need to understand better what this class 4 means and what the volume is.
Through the chair, maybe I could just provide one point of clarification. So generally speaking, when it comes to class 2 to class 4, and when we're talking about increases of noise of decibel and permissible noise levels, so generally speaking, it only applies to outdoor spaces on lands. Indoor spaces within a property always have to be mitigated to a certain noise level. So when it comes to someone's bedroom or their living room, whatever that might be, it always has to meet ministry standard within the actual dwelling. So technically speaking, we're really talking about the exterior of the lands and their outdoor amenity space as opposed to the interior of a property. The developer would always have to mitigate the actual structure of a building to that inside standard for noise.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, you have your hand up.
Yeah, and that's where when I was talking to staff, I kept having to correct myself that classification doesn't be developed from a noise study. It's non-technical. It's characteristics of the property and abutting properties. And that's where I was, as I dug into this, to be honest, quite a bit. And where I think it's prudent for us, for our staff, or as our public works manager said, for the existing businesses and for the new people moving in. Again, our official plan even states that area for justification is a higher noise level. And so again, to me, they would have to mitigate that. As Dan said, it's about the outside noise. But the problem is, even after a noise study, we're still back to classifying the land, and the classification of this land does mitigate higher noises. And I guess that's where I realized that this is not technical. It's characteristic, and the land is characteristic of higher noise levels. And that's where I think we're being more prudent on classifying it a 4 with a full comprehensive noise study. That's why I like that option.
Great. Any other questions or comments to that? There is a motion that was prepared, and I guess the Deputy Mayor, you did say you would make a different one. We can do that now, or we can do that at the end of the meeting.
I'll do that now.
Okay. So what?
I will make a motion of Jeff's. It's the area be classified a 4 with additional testing to take place to determine if additional mitigation is required. It's point number 2 for options for council.
Okay. That's your wording. I just want to confirm, because when you just spoke, Deputy Mayor, you talked about a full noise study. So
Yeah, sorry. If
additional testing, is that enough to say that it's a full noise study?
Staff, Jeff, would you comprehensive noise study, or noise study that needs to be done on the lands, however staff would like that worded? I'm fine. That wording at the end, Jeff's option. That was Jeff's option. Yeah.
Through the mayor, actually, as part of a class 4, if we move forward with that, there has to be a study done on every single noise source in the area and brought back a more in-depth. That is actually part of class 4. So just by going forward and using it as a class 4 now, we will follow up, and the developer will have to bring back a full-fledged report on every single source.
Yeah, you can change that to all sources. You can change that to all noise sources. Then, yeah.
I guess Tina can, I'm just writing this for my notes, and Tina will make sure that it's proper in the minutes, but I want to make sure, and I guess from what Jeff just said, if we classify it as a class 4, then all of that testing follows from that classification. The required testing follows. Am I right on that assumption?
That's right, Dan, right?
Okay.
That could be part of the motion added.
Through the chair, the more comprehensive noise assessment will have to be completed regardless on the property. It was whether or not you classify the lands class 4 or class 2 before getting the study.
Gotcha. So if they're classified class 4, then the comprehensive noise study has to take place regardless. Gotcha. Okay. I think I've got it. Okay, so the essentially it's that your motion is that council that council classify the area be classified as a class 4 with additional testing in the forms of comprehensive noise study to take place to determine if additional mitigation is required.
Yes.
Okay.
Second the motion.
Made by the deputy mayor and a seconder for that.
I'll second that.
Councillor Regan. Any further discussion on that? All opposed? And that is carried. Okay. Okay. All right, moving on. Thank you for that report. As I said, that's probably the most technical report we've had to discuss in quite some time. Public Works, Jeff.
Okay. Madam Mayor, just bringing it up, my next report is the municipal right-of-way bylaw that we discussed earlier. I did bring forward a report in discussion that we did have damage to a right-of-way and that we had difficulty following up on that. So council directed staff to bring back a municipal right-of-way bylaw that they could review, and that would give us the ability to better basically look after our road allowance that's out there. So in discussions with Mark Russell, our bylaw officer, he brought forward an example that he uses at Middlesex Center, and we mirrored a lot of that that was developed by them, and proceeded to bring this one forward to council for their comments and review. So I'll open up to council for questions on it.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Questions on this one? Jeff. Okay. Believe there is a motion that's prepared, and just so I was clear on this, that this is the draft bylaw that we would be approving, because it does have to, Gina, I think you said it has to be sent for approval from the ministry, correct? So, okay, so we can deal with that motion at the end. Okay.
Okay, keeping things moving. My next report is I did have a request come into Madam Mayor into the office here from Ryan O'Shea, who lives up on Stonehouse Line. He's working with another resident who is the hydro lines are out in the agricultural fields of their farms, and they've contacted Hydro to see if we can, or if they can, get the hydro lines relocated to road allowance so they could better use of their farms. In this, Joe went out and, or the road supervisor went out and reviewed. It looks like there's about 13 trees along the area of Ryan O'Shea's property. 5 are probably in pretty decent shape, I would say, and the other remaining 8 are definitely past their prime. In this discussion, I would note that the other landowner that is part of this process is where we did have a problem with trees coming down and not having the proper permission at the time. So there is a little bit of irritation in the hydro project to start with. But at the same time, as the road manager, I have to take a step back and take a look at this request and evaluate it as it comes before me. And I think it's pretty straightforward that we, as the road authority, we discourage people from putting trees into the road allowance. We have a landowner that has come forward, says that they would like to take the trees out of the road allowance to better to take better use of their land. They're willing to pay for all that. They're willing to do all the work, and and Hydro would prefer the line to be out in the road allowance for better maintenance and for upgrades for that. So I based on that, I have to look at approving or supporting the request, and not looking at the irritation of how this started, but how it should move forward. I would also like to say in discussions with Mr. O'Shea that there is a couple of trees there that it's hard to get the equipment in and out of his property, that he actually was going to come forward even without the hydro line to come down, that there's some safety issues right in there coming out on the road, that he actually was going to request a number of the trees to come down as well. So that, you know, this has been on his mind even before this upgrade to the hydro line. So having said that, the council does have the option to turn it down. The hydro line can go down the road and jump across and then meet the location where they're going to take it to. So I just wanted to make sure that was pointed out, that that we do not have to follow this. It's actually, we could allow it and just allow things to sit as is. Having said that, though, I think it's prudent that we move forward and we support our residents out there. It really does hinder with the larger equipment and farmers trying to go around these lines out in the field. It does affect their productivity and their ability to farm their land. So I think that's what I'm leaning towards, is making sure I keep that in focus. So my recommendation is that we do permit Mr. O'Shea to take down the trees just on his property only, to assist in moving the hydro line out into the road allowance.
How many discussion on this request? Jeff, so this is just, 13 trees. It's not a wood lot. When a request is made at the county for, and typically it's obviously an agricultural request from a farmer with the removal of trees or partial wood lots to improve farming. We have a policy that if that is the recommendation, that the farmer has to then replace the trees somewhere. Depending on the property that they own, it might be in another area of their property, it might be somewhere else, but they have to replace those trees. So I guess my question would be, and maybe not for this request, I don't know, but I know that you're looking to maybe develop something, maybe a little bit more, with a little bit more teeth in it. I guess that was the right of way too. But would that be an option, is to ask Mr. O'Shea to replace the 13 trees?
And through Madam Mayor, I think that's, we could definitely tie something to the request that we would like to see a replacement tree for tree. I know even just in the road allowance or for the road department, we do take down a tree out in front of our person's property. We do offer a replacement tree that they can plant on their property, because we do want to promote that, we keep the growth going. So I think we could tie this approval to a replacement one for one. I think we could offer to Mr. O'Shea that he facilitates something on his property or on a property that he can approve that he's planning. And if he would rather not, then I'm sure that we could arrange to find an appropriate property to have 13 trees planted on. I think it's prudent to tie that to it. So I would agree with that.
And okay, is there any other discussion on that? Councillor Mastarakis.
Just a comment. I see it ties nicely with the next piece in Parks and Rec, where we're looking at a community forest. So we are a community that wants to make sure we keep our trees and so forth. So maybe there's a tie into that Mr. O'Shea can do as well. But I think keeping the replacement is a great idea, whichever way it goes.
Thanks for that. I think it's been noted a number of times, and I would like to think we're getting better, but Lucan-Vidolph is one of the lowest treed communities in the county. So anything we can do to improve that would be great. Maybe what I'll do at this point, and maybe I will look to Councillor Mastarakis to make the recommendation, but the recommendation that Jeff supplied is obviously to accept his recommendation, but if we could tweak it to have the addition that he worked with the homeowner to replace the trees, if that would be something that somebody could move. And as I look to Councillor Mastarakis.
And may I slightly amend that, maybe to look at those trees that would have had to come down because they're dead anyways. So I don't know if you replace the full amount, whatever the case is, the trees that were living and good that would need to be replaced.
Yep, for sure. Okay, thank you. Can I get a seconder for that, Councillor Westman? Did you want to talk, or are you just seconding it? Okay.
No, I just want to make a statement that, I mean, over the last year and a half, 2 years that I've been on the conservation authorities, I've made kind of my own little custom of going around and just seeing what we have in our community for trees. And due to emerald ash borer and various other issues, we've lost pretty much all the ash trees. A lot of other hardwoods and nut trees like hickory and butternut are dying. This year we've had a bit of a overrun of the gypsy moth, and that's going to have an effect on woodlots as well. I think that I would like to recommend that we maybe get as much from this as we can, and not just this, but other things around the community, instead of just one tree per tree. I mean, I believe our custom when we remove a tree is we offer 2 trees to the landowner. So I would like to maybe coordinate with the conservation authorities or through Parks and Rec or whomever to see if we can't get more than maybe double the trees planted along a fence bottom or along another woodlot, so that we can start improving what we have in our community. Because from the conservation authorities, they do these surveys and studies, and established trees are a big thing. These trees that we plant are not considered trees until they grow to a certain height and size and are established. So I think it's important that we work for the generations to come. In our time, we work to get as many trees planted as possible. And we have done quite a bit as a council to plant trees, and I think we can do better. So that's my 2 cents.
So I think your comments will tie nicely in with Paul's report as to how we can do that. But I guess with regards to the O'Shea property, if we can maybe work on that motion that Councillor Mastarakis, I just need a seconder for that one. Councillor Westman. Okay, and then all opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Then is that for you, Jeff?
Well, I have a bit of a verbal update.
Okay.
I'll try and keep it very short. I know we're keep moving here. Just wanted to let everybody know that we did sign the agreement for the sand salt shed this week with IMOS. Just to point out that costs have gone up again this year on that. We are now up to 15% on cost of everything on the sand we use in there, and I believe the loader is $25 every time we move it. So that's in place, which is good news. And I think we did have a discussion last week with the MTO and IMOS on the use going forward, and you'll see before the end of the year a report come through council on an update on that meeting. So we'll see. I'll bring that forward to council at a later date. Update: the pickup truck new pickup truck for the road department will be here next week. We've reviewed it. It's meeting what was tendered, and it'll show up. Not next week, this week. It'll show up later this week. The arena crosswalk light is now working. It was more elaborate than I had hoped. We couldn't get replacement parts that were there, and we had to replace the unit that was there at a cost that was considerably more than what I wanted to spend there, but it needed to get up. It is very important to the community that is working. I, in fact, this week have had to stop a couple of times in the morning for kids crossing there. So I'm glad it's up. I'm disappointed that we had to replace the system. So that's there. Just a heads up on later on the parking agreements. Julie and Ron and myself have been working on. Julie has done a great job on it. We've finalized the parking agreements for for in behind the museum. So you'll see a bylaw show up later for that. If anybody has any questions on that, it's fairly straightforward. It's for the businesses on Main Street, so that a parking space is provided for them at the back. As well, there will be a third reading of the bylaw for the Hodgins B drain. I think everybody will remember that that's in the process. This will be the final aspect of that drain, and then that'll move forward. So, and I believe that's it. I'll be quiet now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions for Jeff? Okay, moving on. Paul, Parks and Rec.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I guess with my first report, this actually ties in very nicely. It works out very well. So with the growing concern of climate change and concern for environmental and green initiatives such as the 2 billion tree project, staff has been exploring projects for Lucan-Medolph that we could participate and make an active contribution to present to council. We've had several meetings with the ABCA, just kind of looking at different properties we own and different projects and potential out there utilizing lands that we currently have and features we currently have. And we have one section of land that's 14 acres in proximity to the north side of the Public Works building. Its proximity to the drain and the shape of the property leaves the options for that land restricted solely to agriculture or municipal use, I suppose. Because of that, we currently lease out the land for agriculture. So if we were to remove that section of land from the lease agreement, we would be foregoing on approximately $4,144 annually. This parcel of land, though, because of its size and location to the drain, would be very suitable for a tree reforestation project, community forest project. And the fact that we could combine several different initiatives into one piece of land for the community, I think is actually a very positive thing. There's the four different aspects would be 5 acres for reforestation demonstration, a school and community planting area, a tree nursery, which the municipality could use to grow our own trees to develop to a good size, to have more success rate for planting and developing when we replant into the parks, and even there's potential for even, I guess, the council could have giveaway days for trees or so forth, and it would help reduce costs as well because we're actually developing the trees ourselves, and a lot of that tree planting can be facilitated through grants. There's also an option for commemorative woods. Haskett Funeral Homes, one of the oldest businesses in Lucan-Medolph, it has a partnership with the ABCA for commemorative woods. We currently do not have any in Lucan-Medolph, and as a local business, it'd be nice for one of their initiatives to be able to be utilized in our own community. For people in the community, we often get requests for trees in parks, and sometimes it's a struggle to figure out where to put them, and having one nice commemorative woods could be a very nice thing for the community. So with that, there is quite a lot of options put before you of the potentials. I think as the community participation in it could be very beneficial and have something for everyone to be very proud of. The nice positive about this is a lot of the these projects fit within ideal grant projects in reforestation. So a lot of this would not be funded by the municipality. The only cost to us would be foregoing revenue and then some minor land preparation. And then obviously there'd be some maintenance aspects, much like the tree project behind the old township office. We go out 3 times a summer to cut in between the trees just to protect them from rodents and pests chewing away at the bark and help ensure their survival. So there'd be some maintenance to that, but I think overall for the cost for the township and what we could get out of it for the community would be a very nice project. I know I spoke briefly with Tree Canada, just inquiring about their grants, and they had even mentioned that this is exactly what those grants are meant for, is projects like this. It's a very positive one for our community. So with that being said, we like to put this forward to council for consideration in budget talks. It's a very small amount for our cost of it, but it may need to be brought up again at the next council meeting, as November 30th is the deadline for Tree Canada for their grant process.
Well, thank you very much for that, Paul. That was quite an extensive report. Comments, questions for Paul on this? Councillor Westman.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's a great idea, and I support this. I'd just like it in every way. So, Councillor
Regan.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're very fortunate to have that piece of property. It's an I think this is I think we should move forward with this, and I don't know if we can do that tonight or how we can do that. I know we have to discuss it. I'm getting all excited about the fact that we're planting trees. So yeah, so we're using this for something, and it's a community. I think I wrote it. It's just something for the community to get involved in, and it's just, yeah, it's good work, Paul. I'm in.
Are you going to plant all the trees, Daniel?
I'll do that. No, I will do that. Absolutely. All you have to give me a shovel. I'm in there. Let's go.
Deputy Mayor.
No, I just wanted to say, remember and thank Jeff for having us at one point in time reflect on that property and pause us. So that's why we're able to do that today, and I'm glad he did that. So sometimes we rush, and I think sometimes it's good to pause and think, and thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, for sure. Councillor Westman?
Yeah, as far as planting trees, I'm fairly certain I can round up some youth members of our community from our scouting and guiding group. And I guarantee you'll probably get some participants from the local schools as well. So I think this is going to be something that not only will establish some trees in our community, but will build some wonderful memories for our kids.
If I may, Madam Mayor, exactly. That's the whole purpose, is we can develop an annual program with our schools and scouting and guiding. And the idea is have a staging area just on the way in, so we can safely bring people there, and they could come in and slowly develop that forest. And then they can also see the demonstration forest. I think it's important too. I completely forgot to mention this in my report. Well, it was in the report, but I didn't mention it. As we move forward towards the Parks and Rec master plan to formalize a trails committee, that there's a portion of this land that has to be left accessible for drain maintenance. So it could be an ideal location as well to also put a trail system through, so people can enjoy the project that for the community. So it's once again another positive behind it.
So I think it's a great idea, and I'm thrilled with everybody's excitement. So I don't want to be like Debbie Downer on this, but maybe my suggestion would be to maybe give Paul the direction to look into the application of grants, but really have this discussion as part of a formal budget discussion, because there will be implications for the 2021 budget. I can see by the enthusiasm with everyone that I think it's something that you want to pursue. So you could give Paul the direction to explore the grant options, since there is a deadline, but we could have a really fulsome discussion as to the implications to budget when we have the budget discussions that will be coming up in the near future. It's just my 2 cents. Paul?
If I may, Madam Mayor, would the direction then be to apply for the Tree Canada grant to see for success and then continue the discussion, or should we push that back to maybe for later on in November?
No, I think if it was me, I would say go ahead and apply. I mean, go ahead, and that won't hurt for sure, and that gets the process going. But we can, as I say, that can all be part of the rest of it can be all part of the budget discussion. I think in fairness to other departments that come to budget with these sort of projects. So.
Thank
you. We would probably just need a motion to direct him to go ahead with the grant. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. Any further discussion on this at this point? So the motion would be to direct Paul to explore the grant option. All opposed? Oh, Daniel.
I'm just making the motion.
Oh, I had.
Oh, you already have. Sorry.
Daniel.
Okay.
Yeah. All opposed? And that's carried. Once again, great report, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I have to thank Ian Jean of the ABCA. He was a tremendous help with kind of setting this up and working with me at some options for it. And it really kind of opened up my eyes to the potential there.
Yeah, good.
So just a quick update. I know, so as the new Section 22 orders were put in place, there was some concern for sports and recreation. Luckily, kind of last minute, there was some revisions to the orders, and just so council's aware, it has not impacted our minor sports association in a negative way. They were able to continue on how they operated, it's very good, because that was some of the concern leading up to it. It didn't really change much for them. In fact, for my staff, it kind of assisted a little bit in tightening up some of the rules that were kind of unclear. There was gray areas, so it's been okay. The only thing that it really affected for us was some of our programs that we were trying to get moving again, like volleyball. So that's had to go on to 2 nights a week as opposed to 1, because we can't have 2 games going at the same time. But all in all, there hasn't been a dramatic effect for recreation for us. Hopefully, everything keeps going up and things keep going positively, and we're doing everything we can to make sure everything's operating safely. And on that, we're kind of looking at different options for programming as people are anxious, especially winter's coming up, so outside's not as much of an option. We're trying to looking at different safely operated programs that we can offer to people within guidelines, without overstepping anything, just keeping it safe, but keeping people having things to do, because that's going to be the real thing that's going to get to people in the wintertime. Other than that, I think everything's going pretty good. And, I'm very happy with our organizations. They've worked well with us. And yeah, I guess the only one downside is the junior Cs haven't been able to utilize our facility anymore because they have 25 on a team. It does not coincide with it. So they've had to go on outside the health unit to practice.
Right. Thanks for that, Paul. Any questions for Paul?
Oh, no. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Yep, no worries.
I forgot one aspect of that. I did want to maybe briefly talk with council about the public skating that we had kind of proposed. So obviously now we could only go down to 12 people per hour. I know there's been some negative feedback on having a charge to that hour. I don't know if council would like to discuss that, maybe some more, debate it. I know at Strathroy Caradoc is recently opening up to the idea of having public skate and their moms and tots programs. And what they're doing is sticking with their fees bylaw, and on their fees bylaw, mom and tots have no charge, but then public skating does. So I don't know if that's an option we would like to look at, or since it's only 12 people, do we apply the same thing across the board?
Okay, discussion on that. Councillor Regan?
I just actually like to see it just waived. I don't think we should be charging for public skating. I think people are going through enough when it's 12 people. And to me, it just seems like I don't really know if it's paying for, and I'm just thinking about if you have to have extra cleaning and stuff. I mean, I don't know if that can be charged to COVID expenses, but I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way that we're charging for public skating just for an hour. And, I mean, I don't know how many sessions we're going to have, how many people. It's just, I think it's I guess a service we can give them. I don't know. I don't know how other people feel. Like I said, I think it's something that we should think about, talk about, and maybe I'd like to see it waived, actually. Thank you.
Question or any other comment, Councillor Manders or Deputy Mayor Manders? Sorry.
Like I agree with you, Daniel. My question is, like when it's only 12 and managing potential lineups and people coming for free skating, that's what's going to be interesting. And not, as opposed to charging whatever, $5, $3, $2. It's not about the money, but it's then also about supplying that service of free skating. And if people, what time do they get to the arena? Where do they stage? How do you let them in? I mean, there's not a whole lot going on right now. And it could create a lot of problems. And I guess how to correct it, I don't know. But unless we did a free skate a couple times and staff kind of gets back to us, because I'd be more worried about people bunching up out behind and be, out front of the arena and trying to get in for a free skate with nothing going on. Just a comment. I'm not like, it's not about the money, but it's about, are we creating more problems?
I guess my input on this would be, I go to Winners and they're counting me in and they're counting me out. So to the Deputy Mayor's point, it's the whole management of how that's going to happen. And while usually I'm all about let's provide for our community, but I do think we need a better understanding of what exactly that cost is, because it's not just a matter of having somebody clean. Do we need somebody to manage the numbers? And then it's, for 12 people on the ice at a time, we have to, I think we need personally, I would like to see what that looks like.
Also,
anyways, Paul?
If I may, just to direct the comment that the deputy mayor had. So I have reached out some of the other places that have actually started doing public skates. It's important to note that they have a larger limit. Obviously, they have 50 they're allowed. Some of them have done first come, first serve. I wouldn't be in favor of that option. My suggestion would be pre-register. So even if there's no fee, at least we could have them call ahead of time so we know who's coming, how many, and then we tell them when to be there 15 minutes before. There would be some staff involvement. We would have to then let them in, take attendance, make sure they've screened, and then allow them access. There's been a lot of conversation amongst the other municipalities about, what's the cost of this? What's the cost? And I can say from a staff standpoint, the additional cleaning and even like letting people in and out, it hasn't been significant as I think some people have worried about. Then again, it's been easier with organizations because they've already had that plan in place and they've mass sent it out to the user. So this is people off the street. So there might be a little bit more explanation and it could take a bit longer to get them in. There might be some extra administration to that. So there's two sides to think about on that. I don't think it's going to be tremendously impossible. Obviously the 12, definitely, who do you turn away? During the day, it's going to be a lot easier with the moms and tots and seniors, as we've never really had more than maybe 8 to 10 anyways. So as long as getting them used to that pre-registered format would be the big thing, because we have to allow them access.
Councillor Regan, did you want to add anything else? I saw your mic was off a minute ago. Oh, okay, we're good. So I don't know how you want to proceed. Trial or?
Yeah. I guess do we try with what we already presented to council with the $5, see what the uptake is to that, see what the buy-in is, and then if it's, we get a lot of negative feedback, do I bring it back to council maybe? And it's important to note, in the past, the Mum and Tot skates have always been offered as a free service.
Right. Well, maybe that's the place to start.
Yeah. That's fine.
Start with Mums and Tots, maybe. Okay.
I think that's a good idea, because I think the public skates would be in prime time hours. So that's, the more expensive hours anyway, so maybe more appropriate to charge at that time.
But yeah, as I say, maybe your place to start is where it is already a smaller group. Okay. All right. Any other questions for Paul? Okay, councillors' comments. Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I just I want to thank everyone for the feedback they've been giving me. I've asked some questions about a request I got for rural residential surplus farms separation or severance. So I just want to say thank you for all the feedback, and hope we can continue to discuss this. I'd like to be able at some point in time give the ratepayer a little direction so that they can know what kind of direction to take, or if there's support or if there's not. I do hope that you'll consider that over the next little while and give me some direction so I can help the ratepayer. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Councillor Westman. I'm not entirely sure that that should have been part of the councillor's comments, but appreciate where you're coming from. Councillor Regan.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a couple of just quick things. So a couple of meetings ago, I had my class listen to council. I just wanted to report back to and thank all of the staff and my fellow members of council, because there were a number of students who reported back to me that they didn't realize how complicated it was to run a municipality and how important the decisions.
Can I interrupt you? Because that was the marathon meeting too. So for those that circled back and watched the whole meeting, congratulations to all of them.
Yes, I actually had 5 of them that actually watched the whole thing. Some of them just watched me, that's fine. Anyway, okay, no, anyways, I just wanted to thank, because that was just part of the learning process. So some of them were very, actually it had no idea just sort of how much municipal politics sort of affect them. So the other thing, secondly, and I was just wondering if I could just get some information. Do we have any update on the soccer fields and how that's moving forward? Ron, sorry, Ron. Sure.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we had an initial meeting with the property owners themselves, and we're at the stage now where the lawyers are talking to each other about a sort of a preliminary agreement. So that's sort of step 1, and then we'll go from there. But yes, we are moving, and we continue to move forward on that.
Thank you. I just one more comment, if I could, Madam Mayor.
Can I just on that, but a recommendation will be coming to council?
Correct. Yep. Okay. Yeah, because there's a number of issues that still need to be addressed. So it's a very preliminary step 1. Yes.
And I guess we just have to watch what we say, since that is a property matter.
Correct. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, and finally, Mr. Little and I attended an on-site visit over at the Lion Shed. There were some concerns about some water coming into the building and some of the drainage issues. So I may call on Mr. Little just for more of the technical. I'm just wondering about moving forward with that. There was some discussion about water coming up into the building, entering from the rear of the building. and then coming up under the cement, I think that they were talking about. They also mentioned about maybe putting an eaves trough around the building just to mitigate the water just dropping right down beside the foundation. So and so the second to that, it was also when I was there, I kind of noticed at the back of the building, there was a lot of scrap metal and broken lawnmowers and broken pallets and rotting wood and that sort of thing. And I'm just wondering, it's a township property. I'm wondering if we might look at cleaning that up a little bit. I know there's stuff there that was piled neatly at one section, but the rest of it looks like it was just sort of scattered. So there's a lot of scrap there. I'm just concerned about maybe injury. I'm just concerned about the fact that it's our property and it doesn't look all that great. So again, anyway, and if I wasn't sure if Jeff wanted to just talk a little bit about that, the drainage issue, if he could.
I'll maybe just follow. So I did Madam Mayor, through the mayor, meet out on site. The Lions did have a concern about water entering the building at the one corner to, I would call it the northwest corner, and coming up through the floor. So we did look. There was a drain put in. I believe it was in 2019, I believe, or something along those lines, or late 2018 maybe. And the Lions did at that point admit that drain is working 75% of the time. That it's during heavy rains, that they're concerned about the northwesterly corner. Standing there, you can see that the land does slope down towards that corner, and particularly in the one property that is directly north of the Lion Shed. There is a real low spot there, and at some time when that gets developed, they're going to need drainage back in there. So I suggested at that time that we look at there's a municipal drain in the vicinity that it would be very easy to extend a branch of it up to that corner and take in all the water in that corner. So that is an option that when Paul and I get a chance to look at it, we could extend a branch from the municipal drain there. So
Paul, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, just to comment on some of the material behind the building. Some of it's been stacked there as a material that could be reused for various projects. Obviously, staff needs to be better at doing it neater, maybe putting some of it inside. There's a limit to space inside the shed with all the implements and all that. Some of the material does not belong to us. Some of it is other stuff that it's been in that kind of long weedy area for a long time. But I've already worked with my staff to just the last couple of days, just talking about kind of different ways that we can better, if we're going to reuse the material, maybe store it a bit nicer, a bit better. Jeff's offered that we could utilize Public Works yard to maybe store some of it, because in an effort to have some cost savings, it's nice to have that steel on hand for minor repairs and fixes. But we can address it. There's some things there that we just need to take away. Some are from the chiller replacement and so forth. They're very heavy, large pieces of metal. So we're just kind of waiting for the time to get rid of it, but we can address it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other councillor comments? Just a couple of things. Wondering about.
Peter had his hand up. Kathy.
Oh, did he? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's just something fun anyways. If I can, can I share my screen? It's a fun thing, really, if you allow me.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Oh.
So this is Halloween in Lucan, okay? A family brought a horse with their son, Max, who's a knight in shining armor. Came to my neighbor's house. That's Diamond the horse with Mum there. And of course, there's enough distance between the horse and the people delivering the candy. So everything was fantastic. But anybody who's coming to Lucan, you have to meet that standard or better for Halloween. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that they just won Halloween. One trick-or-treating, that's for sure. That was a great picture. Thanks for sharing that. I just had a couple of things. One, I just wondered if we were going to, now that it's November and we did have snow, the bylaw officer will be out with parking. And can we put a reminder out to residents that parking on the streets is no longer allowed, whatever I think the date is, November 15th, maybe. We can do that. And then the other thing I wondered about, I know we had talked about it the last election, and maybe this is something that Lisa can look into. Oh, you know what? I didn't even ask you for your report, Lisa. Oh, okay. I'll ask you the question and then you can give us a quick report. About election boundaries and ward boundaries. And I know that there was some concern maybe the last election about our numbers and were they the same across the board and whether we were at a position where boundaries needed to be adjusted. So it doesn't have to happen right away, but I guess I'm thinking that any adjustments that might need to happen would have to happen in 2021 to be ready to go for January 1st, 2022.
Correct. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, so we can do that projection, I think, quite easily to see how our wards are balancing out or not balancing out anymore. I know in 2018, we were pretty good, but there's been a lot of development since, and I think we can project out maybe even a couple years, given some of the ridge crossing, the boom that, you know, maybe 2 years ago we didn't think would be this big. So definitely we can do that for the new year and just kind of give council a sense of, do we need to adjust our wards a little bit, that sort of thing. My economic development officer report, just want to let everyone know about Remembrance Day services. So we've been working with the Legion and Wilberforce School and trying to make sure all our communication was similar. And so we developed a communication statement sort of thing, and that's been put out on Facebook. So what they're going to do, it's just being a few people are going to go to the cenotaph on the 11th. I would say it's private in a way. It's not private, but it's a select few will be there to actually lay the wreaths. And what we've offered then is to do the service on our Facebook Live page, on the township page. So if people can't attend, they will be able to watch it live on Facebook. And then hopefully maybe if they're, you know, can't watch it live, they watch it later on with their family that evening. So like I said, we worked with Kelly and Gail at the Legion to kind of coordinate everything like that. We did a video with Kelly today at the Legion, just kind of promoting the Poppy campaign and trying to get people to definitely, I guess, you know, put their money towards the Legion a bit more this year. They've had some lack of funds through their events not happening. So that video should be out tomorrow as well. One other thing, Ron and I met with IT today at the county to start looking at cameras for the council chambers in the future. So when we're back in a room together, that will have a nice camera system, and it'll go through much the same like a Zoom and YouTube and a couple cameras, and it's going to be integrated into the mic. So it'll be a really nice system. Be busy for the camera operator, but it will be a good system to finally get going on, especially with accessibility. So that's everything. Thanks, Kathy.
Sorry to have missed you, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa? Okay. All right. Notices of any changes to budget, notices of motion. Okay. And I will get to our formal motions. So resolved that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph hereby supports the motion provided by the Township of North Glengarry in regards to the Safe Restart Agreement funding and ineligible COVID-19 related capital costs, copy attached hereto as Schedule A, and further direct staff to forward a copy of this resolution to our local MPP, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and the Minister of Finance. Can I get a mover and seconder for this, please? Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that council directs staff to proceed with option 2 as presented in report number FIN-13-2020 and further direct staff to draft a new water, wastewater billing and collections policy for adoption at the November 17th, 2020 regular council meeting. A mover and seconder for this, please. Councillor Mastarakis and Deputy Mayor. All opposed? And that's carried. Resolved that the council approve the draft municipal right-of-way bylaw as presented in report number PW-31-2020. A mover and seconder for this, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's carried. And resolved is that if no one cares to speak to these bylaws on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, read a third time and passed, and that they be numbered 49-2020, the execution of Main Street parking agreements, 50-2020 temporary road closure bylaw, 51-2020 the confirming bylaw. And further, that if no one cares to speak to these bylaws on their third reading, that they be considered to have been read a third time and passed, and that they be numbered 40-2020, the Hodgins Drain Branch B, and 41-2020, Animal Control. A mover and seconder for these, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor. All opposed? And that's carried. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 4 minutes after 9. A mover and seconder, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman.